You don't look like a criminal. That's the point. You look like a tech entrepreneur. Penthouse in Dubai. Floor-to-ceiling glass. The kind of view that makes you feel untouchable. To the world, you run a decentralized finance trading firm, legitimate, profitable, boring on paper. In reality, you are a ghost with a very specific skill set. You move money, dirty money. You take it in one end and it comes out clean on the other side, filtered through privacy coins, NFT trades, and layered DeFi protocols so complex that most forensic accountants would give up after 3 hours. Your primary client is a shadow syndicate, tied to the Sinaloa cartel. Right now, you are sitting in your penthouse, staring at a cold wallet on your screen. $50 million. Your phone rings. The caller ID is masked. You pick up. There's no greeting, just a voice reading your daughter's exact GPS coordinates, her school, her classroom, her seat number, and you realize something has gone very, very wrong. 3 years ago, it started the way all bad decisions start. It looked like an opportunity. A man introduced himself as a venture capitalist. Clean suit, calm voice, a proposal that was almost elegant in how simple it sounded. He had a large liquidity pool. He needed it moved, $5 million a week, tumbled through privacy coins and NFT trades until it was untraceable. Your cut? 3% of all volume. You never asked where the money came from. You only looked at the code, and the code was clean. The first year was flawless, completely digital, completely removed from anything physical. No guns, no warehouses, no faces you had to look at, just wallets and transactions and numbers on a screen. You told yourself you were just a technician, plumber, not a criminal, someone who moved water through pipes without asking what was in the water. That was your first lie. By year 2, the volume had scaled to $150 million a month. You were legally netting over $4.5 million every 30 days. You bought the penthouse. You hired private security. You acquired global citizenships, 3 of them, because that's what people do when they want to make sure they always have an exit. And somewhere in that process, you stopped being scared. You started believing the story you told yourself, that you were the smartest person in the room, a tech genius operating in a world that was too slow and too analog to ever catch up with you. The cartel? Street-level violence? That felt like a different planet. Thousands of miles away, a problem for other people. You had code, you had encryption, you had distance, you had nothing. Then you found the flaw, a fractional rounding error buried deep inside the cartel's internal ledger system. A blind spot so small that their auditors had never caught it. Most people would have looked at it and moved on. You looked at it and saw $50 million. The plan felt clean. Sweep the funds in a single transfer to an offshore, untraceable wallet. Then report it as a hack, a rival syndicate sophisticated enough to exploit the same systems you operated. Take your severance. Disappear. You told yourself it was a one-time thing, a retirement fund, the exit you'd always planned but never executed. The transfer succeeded. For 48 hours, you felt like a god. You arrived at the private terminal at Al Maktoum Airport with one bag and a new identity. Your pilot was missing. Standing where he should have been was a man you'd never seen before. He didn't speak. He handed you a tablet. On the screen, a live feed. Your mother's house in Chicago. Her kitchen window. Her morning routine. Every detail sharp and real-time. They didn't care about the hack story. They owned the hackers. They knew it was you before the transfer had even cleared. The demand was delivered in 3 lines. Return the $50 million immediately. Launder an additional $500 million in backlogged funds for free. Timeline, 30 days. You were no longer a contractor. You were a hostage who happened to own a computer. And then the market crashed. 15% overnight. The kind of drop that wipes portfolios and ends careers. Your $50 million in stolen crypto was now worth $42.5 million in liquid value. You were $7.5 million short just to return what you took. And laundering the $500 million backlog would require $10 million more in network gas fees, routing bribes, and payments to people who made problems disappear. You sat with a calculator for 40 minutes. The math didn't work. The most sophisticated theft you had ever engineered had, in the span of 72 hours, left you completely bankrupt. You called your primary contact. You were calm, rational. You made your case. You would work for free indefinitely if they would simply accept $42.5 million as settlement. Market forces. Nobody's fault. A reasonable adjustment. The message came back in 4 words. We don't accept volatility. Then they sent you a photo. Your security detail. The men you had paid 6 figures to protect you. They were unrecognizable. This was the moment the word digital stopped meaning anything. There was no firewall between you and what was coming. There never had been. You had just convinced yourself there was. so you sold everything. The penthouse, listed and closed in 4 days below market value because speed mattered more than price. The cars, the legal investment portfolios, every liquid asset you'd built over 3 years. And then you drained your children's trust funds. You tell yourself it's temporary. You tell yourself you'll rebuild. You tell yourself a lot of things when you're alone at a keyboard at 3 in the morning transferring your children's future to cover a debt you created with your own greed. You covered the gap. 50 million returned. 24 days left. The remaining task, wash $500 million. For free. The cartel's money was too scrutinized for standard tumbling to work fast enough. You needed bribes. You needed access to networks you'd never touched before, which meant borrowing from people who were, if possible, worse than the people you already owed. Russian cyber syndicates. $100,000 a day in interest. You took the loan. By day 16, you'd moved 150 million. 350 million remained. 14 days left. And outside your window, which no longer felt like a view, just a frame, men in black SUVs parked in rotation. 24 hours, 7 days a week. Your wife noticed. She didn't say anything at first, but she noticed. She found the documents, the panic bags in the back of the closet, the drained trust fund records, the kind of paperwork that doesn't have an innocent explanation. You sat across from her and told her everything, not a version of it, not a softened story with technical language designed to blur the edges. Everything. She took the children to the U.S. Embassy the next morning to seek asylum. You couldn't go with them. If you moved with the convoy, the cartel would intercept it. So you watched them leave from a window, knowing that protecting them meant removing yourself from their lives in real time. 8 days left. 350 million still to wash. And now you were completely alone with both of those facts. To meet the deadline, you made the last decision. The one you can't walk back. You bypassed every safe tumbling protocol and started routing the cartel's money through state-sponsored terrorist financing networks. Not cartel money anymore. Not organized crime. International terrorism financing. High treason. You washed the remaining funds. The cartel confirmed receipt. For approximately 4 hours, you thought it was over. Then your penthouse doors came off the hinges. Tactical team. Multiple agencies. The kind of coordinated entry that doesn't happen unless you've been flagged on every major intelligence watch list simultaneously. All accounts frozen. All assets seized. And then the deal. Hand over the cartel's master wallet keys. Testify in international court. And spend 10 years in a black site, no public record, no official sentence, no appeals process. You thought about what the cartel would do if they found out you gave up the keys. You thought about what the CIA would do if you refused. There was no good option in the room. There had not been a good option in this room for a very long time. You cooperated. You spent 3 weeks building a backdoor into the cartel's blockchain architecture, the same systems you'd spent 3 years maintaining. You knew every node, every wallet cluster, every routing pattern. And then you initiated a global freeze. Billions in cartel assets, locked simultaneously across 42 countries. The cartel's financial network collapsed within 72 hours. High-level bosses, people whose names you had never known, whose faces you had never seen, issued hits on your entire bloodline. The government gave you a new name, Asset 884. They scrubbed your digital footprint, your legal identity, your history. The original 50 million you stole, confiscated by the U.S. Treasury. You received nothing. You kept nothing. You ended with less than you started with and a target on every member of your family. You live in a small town now, cold, gray, the kind of place no one visits and no one leaves either. You work IT support, $18 an hour. A name that isn't yours on a badge that means nothing. Your family is in a separate protection program. Different location, different names. The government determined that contact between you increases risk for both parties. You don't argue. You understand the logic. Every car that slows down on your street, you notice. Every unfamiliar face in the supermarket, you catalog. Every night you check the locks twice because the alternative, not checking, feels like the kind of carelessness that ended your old life. You lost your family. You lost your wealth. You lost your freedom. You lost the ability to sit in a room and feel safe. You are alive. That's the complete list of things that went right. Here's what nobody tells you about being the smartest person in the room. Rooms change. You thought you were different from the criminals because you wore a suit and wrote code. You thought the screen between you and them was protection. You thought digital distance meant physical safety. Doesn't. The 50 million was never a windfall. It was bait. Placed in front of someone with the exact right combination of skill and arrogance to take it. Your genius didn't protect you. Your genius is what made you useful. and what made you useful to them made you theirs. The cost of one decision made in 48 hours of feeling like a god. A lifetime of looking over your shoulder in a town you never chose, under a name you don't recognize, for crimes that will never appear in any public record. That is what hubris actually costs. Not in movies, in math. White-collar crime with cartels doesn't end in courtrooms. It ends in consequences that no code can encrypt and no wallet can hide. Modern cartels don't just use guns. They use your greed, your ego, and your own intelligence against you. And they are very, very patient. So here's the question I want you to think about. If you had 24 hours and $50 million, and the most sophisticated criminal network on Earth looking for you, do you actually think you could disappear? Tell me in the comments. I want to know your plan. Every system has a flaw. The most dangerous one is always the person running it. And if this story made you think, subscribe, because the next one goes even deeper.